So great to see so many of you, and I'm seeing more and more countries logging on now. Uganda, Saudi Arabia, many, many more. So welcome everybody. Keep that chat friendly and lively. But I think it's ready to start now, Vera. I think we're ready to kick off, and it is my privilege to welcome our first speaker. We are delighted to have Marianne Boucher, who is the founder and director of HEDA, joining us. HEDA is a non-profit building data journalism news projects all around the world. Hi, Marianne.
Hello.
We were delighted to partner with you on the Sigma Awards last year. And I mean, you and I have been discussing data journalism and data projects for I don't know how many years now. And I think really there are not many people who have a better overview of the challenges, opportunities, and solutions that data journalists around the globe are working on, especially during COVID-19. So it made perfect sense for us to invite you here to kick the summit off. So welcome, and I'm going to pass over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Adam, and hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be here, and welcome to this talk on data journalism and COVID-19, exploring the challenges, opportunities, and solutions many journalists around the world have had to face or come up with over the past few months. As you said, my name is Marianne Bouchart, and I'm the founder of a nonprofit called HEDA, also executive director of the Sigma Awards. I'm going to be doing this presentation with using some testimonies from 4 data teams in South America, Eastern Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. And then we can chat together and see what you have to say about this topic. Let's bring it on. Now, these slides are already live, and you can get them and have a look at the link you see on your screen right now. I'd like to start by showing you an overview of the coverage done by data journalists around the world. Yet, it's quite impossible to show you everything, especially in a 15 minutes presentation. So I'll show you a variety of examples. And if you're looking for some more awesome examples of data journalism on the pandemic or any other topic, I invite you to actually check out the GRIJN's data journalism top 10 updates. They are great, and they come up very often. Now, when the pandemic first started, journalists around the world all shared one goal, right? Figuring out what the bleep was going on. A lot of maps and graphs were published all over the place. And here is an example, a great example from the New York Times, tracking the global outbreak through powerful maps and graphs. And they still update that piece very regularly. It's called Tracking the Global Outbreak, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you have already looked at this before. Now, all over the world, actually, journalists went for similar angles. And here's an example from France and the team at Le Monde, which shows the evolution of the pandemic over time. Interactive graphics were also made, such as this pretty cool timeline by The Guardian in the UK, which looked at the first 100 days of the pandemic. I looked at the page source code to confirm that this was made with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And I also found out that The Guardian's developers have a sense of humor. They left a note for all developers sneaking around their page code to see that, to say that they were hiring. So if you're interested, it's happening at the URL you see on the screen right now. Next up, some more featurey stories that data teams put together to explain the context around the issue. As folks at the FT put it, data has been the only way to truly understand the scale and impact of COVID-19. And so as part of this major series, their data team has compiled chronological chapters of the crisis to help explain the virus's enormous death toll. and why its impact will last for years to come. This is an amazing scrolly-telling adventure about the folks at the FT, which really helps understand underlying issues. Now, the New York Times, as for it, created an animation to show how large respiratory droplets and smaller particles potentially carrying the virus are trapped in the layers of fibers from the masks you wear. There's also an augmented reality component, which you can access from your phone, and it allows you to immerse yourself in the fibers of N95 respirator, which is pretty cool. It most importantly brings scientific facts to one of the most fake news loaded discussions of the pandemic, according to which masks don't work. Up. Now let's go to Spain. Hello everyone from Spain. El País, a Spanish media organization, visualized how COVID-19 transmits indoors through 3 different scenarios: a living room, a bar, and a classroom. Places in which people might get infected by the virus. It also explains how proper ventilation, the use of masks, and short person-to-person encounters can help lower the risks of contamination. Finally, I wanted to show you a story which was not using COVID-19 data directly, while still tackling the issue. It's called Why Time Feels So Weird in 2020, and it was done by Fielding Cage of Reuters, and it's a great little piece of work explaining us why some factors and our experience of lockdown or quarantine can distort our perception of time. It's quite cool, and it's got some games in it for you to play with, so I invite you to really check it out. Now, here is a screen grab of the data source from the first New York Times piece I showed you earlier. You can read local governments, Johns Hopkins University, National Health Commission of the People's Republic of China, the World Health Organization, and so on. You also have words on how and why they picked the data that they picked. I mean, this, although it's not unusual and quite, good practice amongst international data teams to do that, it shows the complexity of data gathering for this topic and how precautious we need to be when covering COVID-19. Now, how precautious do you mean, I hear you say? Well, we've got Catherine Epworth, who is an associate professor of visual journalism at the Reynolds School of Journalism from the University of Nevada in Reno, US, who has put together this quite lovely ethics checklist for COVID-19 data visualizations. She says, Data Visualization Society members have been closely following the massive number of public visualization efforts using COVID-19 data. Some charts have informed and enabled understanding, while others have misrepresented the seriousness of the illness. The pandemic has resulted in an unusually large number of people designing visualizations very quickly, based on very similar, if not identical, underlying data. There are lots of resources out there offering guidance on how to visualize data on the pandemic. And their strongest recommendation was to not visualize, or if you must, to reflect deeply on your intentions first. So the reality is that a lot of people have to visualize data on COVID-19. So with these people in mind, they've assembled a practical guide to using COVID-19 data ethically. Recommendations include things like find a subject expert to partner with, or approach your data the way a journalist approaches a source, or explicitly emphasize key takeaways with words. I've put the link in there so that you guys can check out the full list of recommendations. Next thing I wanted to show you is the International Center for Journalists and the Tau Center for Digital Journalism at Columbia University in the US. They launched the Journalism and the Pandemic Project in April to study the impacts that COVID-19 was having on the field worldwide. And so based on the survey responses that they got over 1,400 English-speaking journalists from 125 countries. The first report from the project pointed out some very alarming things, including threats that journalists were facing during the first stage of the pandemic. And so some of the most troubling findings were the identification that politicians and elected officials were considered as top sources of disinformation by nearly half of the respondents. So that shows a serious lack of trust in governments, unfortunately. Some other findings for journalists covering the ongoing crisis included that 70% of journalists rated the psychological and emotional impacts of dealing with the COVID-19 crisis as the most difficult aspect of their work during this period. 20% said that their experience of online harassment was much worse during the pandemic. And a lot of other insights came out of this report. I'd like to thank the study's author, Emily Bell, Pete Brown, and Julie Posetti for these very valuable insights into the profession. And I invite you to go and check it out. If you do want some more content from the ICFJ on how journalists feel like working on the pandemic, you should check out this webinar featuring Maria Ressa of Rappler and Emily Bell of the Tau Center. So there are indeed many challenges that journalists have had to overcome during this crisis. And so I've decided to talk to 4 teams from different regions in the world, only to find out that we were kind of all facing the same problems, which can be as good and bad news at the same time. I've asked 4 data experts around the world to tell me about their team's experiences. So we've got Mohamed El Haddad, interactive editor at Al Jazeera English in Qatar, Flor Coelho, research and training manager at La Nación in Argentina, Adolfo Arons, deputy creative director at the South China Morning Post in Hong Kong, and Anatoly Bondarenko, data editor at Texty in Ukraine. And so I asked them 3 questions. What's the biggest challenge you faced while covering the COVID-19 pandemic? What solutions have you found to cope with it? And what projects or story are you most proud of? And if you want to answer these 3 questions, do send me your answers by email at the address you see on the screen, marianne@sigmaawards.org. I'd love to hear them, and I'll be compiling them to do a piece later this week. So let's go around what they told me. So first, we heard from Mohamed El Haddad from Al Jazeera, and what he said was that the COVID-19 pandemic was perhaps the single biggest moment for data journalists of our generation. Not only because of the impact the story had on global audience, but the sheer amount of data that needed to be correctly interpreted and presented to help readers make informed decisions. Besides the technical challenges, which include constantly changing data formats, missing values, inconsistent country names, etc., the biggest challenge was correctly interpreting data that they knew had a lot of uncertainty. Nearly overnight, their team had to source the most reliable data filter and analyze that data, and then find tools and technologies that allow them to present digestible information to readers in real time. And I'm sure a lot of you at home have had to face the same kind of situations. The biggest worry was that they were presenting crucial information that they knew relied on incomplete data, and that the solution for them was to really open up the data analysis process. They wanted to be very transparent with their readers on how much the data could tell them, saying basically the coronavirus numbers being reported are not facts, but they are the best that we've got. Now from the folks in Argentina, from early March, actually, when the first case appeared in Argentina, to late May, they received the daily report data with the pandemic updates via WhatsApp messages, out of anything. And it only contained information about the COVID cases per province, not per city. The public contracts were not published in an open format. So one of the greatest obstacles, she said, was the expected legal time to receive public data using the Freedom of Information Law, which is, again, something that I'm sure a lot of you have had to face, unfortunately. What they did at La Nación is that they built their own database and they filled it manually with all the stuff they got from WhatsApp every day, and they had to start daily monitoring Twitter and Facebook to try and get more data into their database. They even collected number of cases per city every single day. They made some partnerships to help them along the way with a news agency of a national college, Lomas de Zamora University, sorry for my pronunciation, which had a students' data team helping them out to collect data from every 135 cities in the Buenos Aires province, which is the biggest one in the country and the one which had most of the cases. They had to extract data from public contracts PDFs the government published, and also made many, many FOI requests. Now let's go to Asia with Adolfo Arens from the South China Morning Post. He said that the top challenge for them was that the information has often been confusing and contradictory, especially on the use of masks and symptoms, which changed quite a few times along the way. And so their great solution was teamwork, as well as getting creative and trying new techniques. So it was indeed for them the first time that they had used live updated databases in their charts. And that's a giant step for them, and congratulations to them. I'm going to be showing you all of those projects that came out of those teams a little bit later. Oh, right. So now we've got input from Anatoly Bondarenko from Texty in Ukraine. They do amazing data work, and for the COVID-19 pandemic coverage, well, Anatoly puts it simply by saying, in short, the situation is a total mess here. They only started to get data feeds in May, with reports published in different formats and really not well suited for modeling a pandemic. As a solution, they wrote tens of scripts for tens of sources, and they also crowdsourced the task to estimate hospital loads in different regions to their readers via social media. Now, what recap can we make of the challenges journalists face while covering the pandemic? Well, first, working with ever-changing data is very hard. In some countries, you couldn't even trust the figures shared by the government. The way authorities gather and share data is still quite very inadapted. And there was still a lack of reliable, updated, and workable data on the various aspects of the pandemic. Yet, incredible things came from these 4 teams and from tons of others around the world. This piece by Al Jazeera English is an explainer specifically designed to put the numbers in context, to help readers understand what that process looked like for the journalists and where the shortcomings were in the data. It emphasizes on what the numbers mean, on the fact there is a lot of uncertainty, and this very fun horse race graphic at the bottom right showing a cumulative count of confirmed cases. La Nación in Argentina did this mind-blowing data-driven report on the evolution of the pandemic in their country, which pretty much stands as an interactive data dashboard for COVID-19 in Argentina. Then the folks at the South China Morning Post, that's their first standalone on COVID, which pretty much came out before any other media organization in the world got to do anything related to COVID-19, and which they managed to publish on the first day of having information, that was January 21st. Finally, the guys at Texty in Ukraine managed to adapt a probabilistic model to monitor the dynamics of pandemic in regions of Ukraine, as in an effective reproduction number. And in the process, they guessed how to obtain the precise time of delay between testing and test results for different parts of the country. And all that from the version history on GitHub. That's crazy, very geeky. In charts that they published, you could see distributions of delay between testing and its results for all regions, from worst to best. And so the most problematic ones had a mean delay of about 11 days, which is awful to say the least. All right. Now, here are some useful links to know more if you want. We've got lots of resources out there online from the ICFJ, from DW Academy, from Internews, lots of webinars on COVID-19 data, journalism, and from the GIJN as well. There are things I've put there so that if you guys want to learn some more skills on, or have some, more tips on how to deal with this, you've got what you need. Before we say goodbye, actually, I'd like to thank the 4 teams who contributed to this presentation, and more specifically, Mohamed, Flor, Adolfo, and Anatoly. I'd also like to remind you that you can take another look at these slides at bit.ly/NIS data, and I'll make this talk into an article which will get published next week on the Sigma Awards Medium publication. I'd like to end this talk by sharing the news that the Sigma Awards 2021 competition will launch at the end of this week. So you guys should keep an eye on the website, sigmaawards.org, and get ready to share the best work you've done on the pandemic. You feel free to reach me if you have any questions about this talk, about the awards, or anything at the email you see on screen right now. Thank you very much for having me. No, I think we're gonna be talking, right? That's the good part.
Yeah, hi Marianne, how are you?
Hello.
Nice presentation. We have so many questions and the chat was, just blowing up.
Boom.
So we have here one question from Umar Hassan.
Yes.
That says, how can data journalists manage their workload more efficiently when covering not just the current pandemic, but future pandemics and wars?
All right, that's a great question. I mean, managing your workload is super important. It's true, and whether the COVID-19 happened or not, it is something super crucial and super important. But we face that kind of issues when things get out of hands, and the great input from the folks at the South China Morning Post, actually, Adolfo, which I was mentioning earlier, said that actually what helped them the most was the teamwork and adapting the way they were working, because there was so much coming to them in terms of data, in terms of information, and then they also had to cope with the rest of the coverage that they do on a daily basis. That you just need to sit down and review the way you do your daily work, and allocate some time to every day to how do you say, to digest what's the latest on the pandemic and what it is that you need to know and you need to inform your readers about, and stay simple and direct to the point, and also try and integrate the added workload from the pandemic to the stuff you do every day. That's what the guys at the South China Morning Post were saying. They were coping with the situation, but I'm sure that's the same kind of solution that every data team in the world have had to do really. You need to change the way you do things to be as coordinated and as organized as possible, even more so because of the pandemic, or whatever big event can come in the future, and also be very open in the way you work with your teammates. Sometimes when situation is hard, we have a tendency to lock down and try and make sense of everything on our own. And actually, by opening up to your teammates and try to coordinate your efforts together, you're coping with an issue together. So you have more brains to think about the problems and more ideas to find a solution for it. But it all depends on the size of your team and the kind of resources you've got. Everyone is just trying their best, really.
So we have time just for one more question, Marianne. So this comes from Justin Jarka. So Justin asks, should COVID visualization be clearly targeted, like some visualizations targeting the political leaders to help make decisions, and others targeting ordinary people?
I think that by this question is asking whether the journalists should be making different visualizations when they are trying to influence political decisions, or whether they're trying to inform the public. Do you think I understand that correctly?
I think so. It's what I understood, but yeah, let's see if reply in the chat.
But in any ways, I think that a data visualization, especially about COVID-19, I mean, most of the people making them, and I shared some guidance about, recommendations that are super useful about how to make data visualizations on the pandemic. That is a practice that everyone is so eager to do, and actually, I think it's one of the things that we should be the more careful about doing. Data visualizations can be so powerful that when you make one on the pandemic, you need to really double check carefully the impact that it can have and the information that it conveys. So you need to make sure that your visualizations are as clear and to the point as possible. I think one of the other recommendations that the Visualization Society has put together is that you need to annotate. So make it as clear as possible to the readers what is the information they should take out of this visualization, so that you're sure that there's no misunderstanding or anything that the readers doesn't understand quite well on your visualization. Does that make sense? You want your graphics to be as clear and easy to understand as possible, and to be as reliable as possible too.
Thank you so much, Marianne. Thank you so much for your time and for this great presentation. I hope to see
Oh, no,
you
you're welcome.